Welcome to another episode of EQ Unlocked, where we talk about emotional intelligence and, all the beautiful things that come along with it. You know, I before I continue, before I go any further, I just want to say thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing these. Thank you for liking. Thank you guys for supporting me the way you have. It's been really amazing reaching a lot of listeners, and so that means the message in some way, shape, size, or form is really helping people, and I appreciate that. I also started an Instagram page. It's called For EQ Unlocked. So just go ahead and check that out. Look for it on Instagram. Again, I'm not a big social media guy anymore, but it's there if you'd like to check it out. So today we're going to talk about executive functioning. And you might be thinking to yourself, what is executive functioning and why do I care? So it's your brain's ability to pause, to think, and make intentional decisions instead of reacting automatically. And so I remember years ago, I had a friend, and that friend told me, I said, man, I said, you know, my executive functioning is just messed up. No matter what I try and do, I can't get it done. And so his words stuck with me. And we're going to get into those words, but today we're going to entitle this episode Why You Can't Think Clearly Under Stress and What's Actually Happening. Because that's what we really need to look at. So anyway, this friend of mine, his name is Justin, and he looked at me with the full certainty. And Justin is one of the people who supported me at my worst. And absolute worst. And I love him for that. And I will always love him for that. And he helped me to believe that a better version of me was possible. And and I'll never forget that or him for that. And so he said, so if there's an answer to it, you'll figure it out. And he said, just give it time. He said, I guarantee whatever, if there's a solution, you'll find it. He said, and there's always a solution. And I was like, yeah, you're right. You're right. So with that, that's kind of where this episode came from. And recently I had a little lapse, I had a little mistake, and we're going to get into that. And it really sent me spiraling, excuse me. But let's get into it. So let's get really real, right? We know what to do. We've read the books. We've had the conversations. We've told ourselves next time I'll handle it better. Uh, But then pressure hits and it's like our brains just shut off. We react, we rush, we say the wrong thing, not because we're incapable, but because we couldn't access what we already knew. And so here's the truth, right? When your nervous system is dysregulated, executive functioning becomes inaccessible, not gone, not broken, just offline. So think about it like, when the Wi-Fi goes out, right? Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just not plugged in, right? Or when you lose service for a minute, it's not that it's not there. You just don't have access to it in that moment. And executive functioning is very much the same way. So a lot of people misunderstand this. They think I need more discipline. I need better habits. I need to think harder. And the truth is that you can't think clearly in a dysregulated state. Think about it. When you're in an argument with somebody you care about, or heck, somebody you don't care about, are you thinking clearly? When you're under immense pressure from work, are you thinking clearly? What about when you're, I don't even care what kind of work you do. When you're under that pressure and under that gun, are you thinking clearly? What about in personal relationships when something goes wrong? You're not thinking clearly. Just yesterday, I had a moment where yesterday was a really rough day for me. And for whatever reason, and I dealt with it, but it was a rough day. And normally I like to say I have rough moments. I don't have rough days. But yesterday was a very, it was a long, rough, you know what I'm saying? It was a long one. It was a rough one. And so the time came to call my daughter, which I do every day without fail. And I said, hey, kid, we talked for just a few minutes. She told me a little bit about her day. And I said, hey, kid, I'm sorry. I'm going to go. I'm going to go pretty early today. I said, I'm just, I just need a minute. And she said, of course, sure, Dad, no problem. And so no sweat off her back. But for me, it ate me up. It ate me up because then my mind started spiraling. Well, wow, I can't even be there for my daughter during a simple phone call. And of course, that's not realistic or logical. I mean, we talk every day. So clearly that's not the truth, right? But once my mind started spiraling, once I started believing this thing, my mind just kind of went offline. And so then my executive functioning started actually slipping even further because I didn't come back to my baseline. I didn't reground myself. I kind of just let it go. Not let the thoughts go, but just started spiraling. And so as I look back past the previous few days, I realized this actually started several days beforehand. And and it had been impacting me ever since. Maybe not in a loud, boisterous way like it would have in the past, but it definitely impeded my ability to go about life the same way I normally do. It impacted my ability to pause, to think clearly in certain moments, to make decisive decisions, even to choose the right response. You know, executive function is not a skill. It's a state dependent ability. So what does that mean? That means you have to be in the right place physiologically, right? Your body has to be at a certain baseline for you to access that executive functioning. And so here's how it works. So I said this event had something had happened a few days prior, and it sent me on this spiral. And what that something was is that I have mentors. I've had mentors for a very long time. And one of my first mentors, I was late going to an appointment with him. And remember, he was a executive or he was a retired executive from IBM Computers. And he was very no nonsense. He was very straightforward, and he told me how it was, and I really appreciated that. But one day I was late to an appointment with him. I was 3 minutes late. I'll never forget it. And I walked in his office, and he looked at me very, very, very irritated with me that I was late. And I looked at him and said, "Hey, I apologize. I'm sorry. I just couldn't find a parking spot downstairs." Da, 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 da. And he looked at me and he told me words that I'll never forget. And this changed my whole perception of time. He said, "When you're 3 minutes late, you steal 3 minutes from my wife. You steal 3 minutes from my family. You steal 3 minutes of my peace and me enjoying my life. So when you take 3 minutes from me, it's not just 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes of something that I can't get back." You want to talk about something that hit you in the chest, boy. I remember that statement. That statement was said to me over 15 years ago. I never forgot it. That's how hard it hit me in the chest. And so let that's kind of been driving my behaviors ever since then. Granted, I didn't just automatically become on time for everything. By no means did that happen. But I became conscious of the value of other people's time, especially in an individual basis, like one on one, right? And so I consistently been improving, and I hadn't been late in a good while to meetings. I hadn't missed appointments or anything like that. But this last Tuesday, I missed a meeting with my mentors. And again, these are very busy gentlemen, and they take time to teach me and to help me become better. And I really appreciate that. And so what happened was is that the previous time we were talking, I wrote down 10 o'clock as our appointment time. And I was there at 10 o'clock. Actually, I was there at 9:50. Problem being that it was actually 9 a.m. that the time was scheduled for. And so that one little thing sent me on a spiral for the next 3, 4 days. And it just compounded, right? It compounded because I didn't give myself the room and the space to just accept that, to accept how it made me feel, to look at the underlying feelings that ignited in me, right? The feelings of, oh, well, you're not taking this as seriously. You're wasting time. You're wasting your time. You're wasting their time. And these are all the thoughts that just ran through my head. And so as these thoughts are running through my head, they're compounding. And as they're compounding, my executive functioning becomes less and less and less and less. And so the point is that after taking time to sit down, breathe, reflect, I was really able to grow from that moment of missing that appointment. Yeah. Am I still upset with myself? Not so much right now. I'm not so much upset with myself right now because as soon as I did that, as soon as that happened, I put a system in place to ensure that it didn't happen again. And that's what gave me the peace of mind is knowing that I had actually taken action to overcome that mistake that I made, right? And I didn't just add a calendar, but I added a process and a routine behind that calendar. Every night before I go to bed, I check my calendar for the next day. When I'm in a meeting and I set an appointment, that meeting is in that calendar before we say goodbye. That's the process. That's my system to prevent from making that same mistake again. So what does this do, right? Yeah, I just went on a long tangent about this silly appointment. But when we're under stress, the brain shifts to survival mode. Access to logic decreases. Reaction speed increases. You don't lose intelligence. You lose access to it. So you didn't become a worse version of yourself. I didn't become a worse version of myself. We just lost access to a better one, right? And so think back to the moments where these times have crept up in your life, right? Think back to these moments where you were in an argument with somebody and you couldn't think of the words to say that you wanted to say in that moment, and it came to you so many hours later. Or think about when you were in that meeting at work and you froze, right? The stress had gotten to you. Think about something you said in the argument that you regret. I could give you a laundry list of things I said and did when I was angry that I regret. I could give you an absolute laundry list of things. I could also give you a laundry list of things other people have said to me that they don't even recall. And when they say, I don't remember saying that, I got to believe them because I know how it works. You know, again, we go back to this idea of freezing in a high pressure work environment, right? You're in there for an interview and you just, uh, 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 right? It happens. It does happen. It's embarrassing. It's not fun, but it's simply your brain reacting to the stress that you're experiencing. Over talking or shutting down. I've been guilty of both of those, making impulsive decisions. So these are the way this stress shows up in our life. And if you've never been guilty of any of these things, well, I applaud you. I sincerely applaud you. But for the vast majority of us, if we're going to be real with ourselves, these things have certainly happened. And they don't feel good when they do happen. But here's the good news. It's not a personal problem. It's a regulation problem. And how does it go, folks? Regulation, awareness, choice. So what does that mean? That means you can't think your way into better decisions. You must regulate your way into access, right? So in that moment, when I was talking to Journey and I felt like I was disappointing her by not being able to talk, the reason I cut my phone call short is because I was trying to regulate my way back into where I needed to be, right? Because I knew I wasn't there. And I didn't want to give her some bogus version of me. And so regulation, it restores access. Access enables awareness. And when we're aware, we can make better choices. And so last night before I went to bed, I sent Journey a quick text message. And I said, hey, kid, I said, I'm sorry I couldn't show up for you today the way I wanted to, but I love you. And her response, well, you know what? Let me grab my phone and tell you her response. Her response was, good morning, Dad. And don't be sorry. You're amazing. So again, these are the things I've taught her. These are the lessons I've taught her to value, not just with me, but with everybody, including herself. But that could only happen once I was regulated, so I could become aware she needed to learn these lessons. And then that awareness allowed me to make the choice to teach her these lessons. So you see all these things I'm talking about, they're not just about you. They're about everybody you love. They're about your mate. They're about your family. They're about your work. They're about your coworkers. Yes, they are about you. And yes, they are going to improve your life, but it's not just about you. So here's a couple tools that you can use to just kind of regulate yourself. You know, in the past, I had a really, really bad habit of oversharing. And you might think to yourself, wow, bro, do you not hear what you're talking about now? Understand that, understand it completely. But here's the reality. Here's the reality is now I do it in a controlled manner. I promise you, you know nothing about my life that I don't want you to know. The difference is that's my choice now, right? Before, I didn't have access to make that choice. I didn't have the awareness to make that choice. I just spewed out whatever popped in my mind and came out of my mouth. And so that's the difference. So here's some, like I said, some helpful tips to help you out with this. Pause before you respond. You don't have to respond immediately. If you want to take a minute, 2 minutes, an hour to respond to that text message, guess what? You're allowed to. Slow your breathing intentionally. So yesterday, when I got off the phone with Journey, I literally took a deep breath in through my nose, count of 4, out through my mouth, the count of 6, and I did that between 12 and 14 times. Because again, I was just trying to ground myself. I was creating space before my next decision. And it was that simple. And the rest of my day was it ideal? No, it wasn't ideal. But guess what? I didn't say anything I regret. I didn't make any reckless choices. I didn't need to numb or avoid anything, right? And that's what these simple techniques can do for you. And they will do for you as long as you access them, as long as you choose to go in and get it done. And so, all these things count, all these things matter, and all these things are valuable. And, you know, I talk about NAWS and I talk about ORS and I talk about these things. And what NAWS has helped me to do is to reshape the way I interact with the world, right? Because I thought it was discipline. I thought my problem was discipline. I thought my problem was X, Y, Z. And so recently I had a young man, actually a couple young men reach out to me who have been using NAWS. One of them for about a month. The other one he's been using it for about 3, 4 months now. Both these gentlemen are doing much, much better in their life. One of them, he started working consistently. And for some of you, you might be like, well, so what? Everybody works. But this young man, he wasn't working on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, he hadn't even had a job in about a year and a half. But now he's working. And yeah, he grinds through every day. Yeah, it's not exactly a pleasure for him, but he's doing it. And he's not doing it because circumstances changed and he had to. He's doing it because he finally feels worthy of working. He finally feels worthy of showing up and just being present. And the other gentleman, well, he he's just doing amazing. I mean, he talks about better relationships with others, but more importantly and more impressive is his relationship with himself. The other day we were sitting there talking and he's talking about a young lady he's interested in. And he looked at her and he said, you know what? He looked at her, he looked at me, he looked at her, came back to me. He said, you know what I realized? He said, I realized that if I need her to validate me, then that's a problem in itself. So before I even go any further, the fact that I need her to validate me says I need to fix something in myself before I even approach that situation. My mind was just like, "Hmm," just exploded because this was somebody who 4 months ago didn't speak to anybody at all. And it's those moments where I know that Knowles is just, it's amazing. And it's going to help millions of people, just like I said. And I'm super excited about it. Of course, I'm excited about it because I am, and because I deserve to be. And so, if you'd like to learn more about Knowles, don't hesitate to email me. Of course, visit the website matthewfstevens.com. There's always you can connect with me on LinkedIn. All the information is there. You guys already know. But again, I just want to go back to say one more thing before I close this out. I really appreciate your support. It means a lot to me. And I'm getting emails every day about different podcast guests wanting to come on. And if you've sent me an email, I'm kind of overwhelmed. And so it's really hard to get to everybody, but I promise you, I will get to you. It may be some time, but I will get to you. And I just appreciate all the support. So with that, we're going to close this out. And I want you to keep this in mind, okay? As far as executive functioning, as far as performing at your best, the goal isn't to become smarter under pressure. It's to stay accessible to who you already are. With that, my friends, I bid you adieu. And as always, be amazing, be you.
As this episode comes to a close, take a moment to notice what stood out for you. Emotional intelligence isn't about having all the answers. It's about building awareness, understanding yourself and the people around you, and choosing how you respond, especially when things feel difficult. Growth happens through reflection and practice, not pressure or perfection. If this conversation supported you, consider sharing it with someone who may benefit from it as well. To explore more tools and resources around emotional intelligence and personal development, connect with EQ Unlocked and Nulls. Until next time, remember, better awareness leads to better choices, and better choices lead to a better life. This is EQ Unlocked.